Welcome to the Power of Great. I'm your host, Matt Crane, and every single week we come to you on iTunes, SoundCloud, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, Pandora, but more importantly, we bring you real, groundbreaking, ground-level people with one mission in mind, and that's to help you recognize that your current situation is not your defining moment. You know, I tell people all the time, entrepreneurship is hard enough. Putting all these layered of expectations of what everyone else is doing makes it just that much harder. So what I'm so thankful for through the Power of Great podcast is that we bring people who really help you understand that your story is your story. But it's so much easier to lay your story's foundation out by using other people's platforms, by helping them help you get to where you want to be. And this week, I'm so honored. I have Brian D. Evans. How's man is an Inc. 500 serial entrepreneur, startup advisor, business coach, PR strategist, and he's the founder of Influencive, BDE Ventures, Startup Guild, and others. And ladies and gentlemen, this is one of the most impressive millennial entrepreneurs in the game today because in addition to creating his very own highly successful ventures, he's advised and mentored hundreds of entrepreneurs on creating their dream businesses. These entrepreneurs have gone on to dramatically increase their success, and it's really what led him to being one of Inc. 500's most influential entrepreneurs. Brian D. Evans, welcome to the podcast.
How's it going? Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. You know, Brian, it's been one of those things where as I've built people to come onto this podcast, and we were talking briefly offline about how, you know, entrepreneurship just allows you to almost evolve into things that you want. It allows you to take your passion and then create a platform around that.
It does, yeah.
So one thing that our listeners are going to appreciate from you, and I'm going to go ahead and lead it off, is that, you know, one of the things you're proud of, and I think that our listeners would love to hear from that, is how you're a 3-time college dropout.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. I tried it 3 times, and I emphasize tried. I'll get to that later about the mindset behind it. But yeah, it's, you know, I was struggled in school tremendously. I was one of those people that just failed every test or did poorly on every test. Just didn't resonate with me. And it's, you know, I'm a late millennial, so I'm on the older end of it. So in my growing up time, it was kind of thought of if you go to school and you're going to get a good job, you're going to sit in a cubicle. But to be honest with you, my idea of hell is sitting in a cubicle for the rest of my life. That is my idea of hell. That is hell to me. You know, it's when I kind of thought about that, and I kept saying to myself, okay, I'll try again after I dropped out one time. Okay, I'll try again. Second time. Okay, no. Then I just, you know, it was too much, and it's just, that's kind of something clicked at that point. Interesting thing was I was an entrepreneur since I was a teenager, but I didn't really see it like that. I had a eBay business when I was 17, 18, and I ended up selling it. And that timing sort of aligned with when I dropped out for the final time. So it kind of said, okay, I'm an entrepreneur. I'm going to be doing things myself this life. So yeah, that's kind of how it all started, really.
You know, I love that. And I'm on the older side of the millennials as well. So I'm almost looked as being like the dad's dad for millennials, right?
Yeah.
But one thing that where you and I are very much aligned is that I was never a cubicle person.
Yeah.
I mean, and my teachers and anyone that ever helped to raise me in the community would tell you that me being seated longer than 5 minutes just wasn't going to happen. And, you know, one thing that I love what you said there was that you were already becoming an entrepreneur. You maybe just didn't title it that way before.
Exactly.
I feel the same way is that when I was in 5th grade, I can remember not having enough lunch money or not having enough money for that ice cream sandwich I wanted. Yeah. So I started taking baseball cards to school and selling them to the kids in the school just to make lunch money and to make ice cream money. And I look back on there now and think, wow, that's entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
Once you started to, what was that moment that you recognized, wow, I've been an entrepreneur since I was 17?
You know, I was at like a turning point in my life because I kept dropping out of school and I was at college and I didn't sort of know where I was going per se. When I was a kid, I wanted to be like in the FBI or something or be an astronaut. Like I had all these crazy things. I wanted to be a basketball player at one point. I didn't get quite tall enough. I'm 6 feet tall, great shot shooting and everything. But what happened was I had an injury as well. I know you had a sports injury. You played professionally though, but I didn't get that far. But I had something called jumper's knee, and it's basically like the knee cap is up too high, so it grinds, and if I hit pavement or jump, it kind of creates like a pain, so you can't really run up and down the court. So I was kind of always the guy that would be shooting threes from outside and stuff. But I think the moment for me was that final time dropping out and realizing, well, what happened was I sold this business. I had this eBay business, and somebody wanted to buy it from me. And to me, that was like, this is I'm dating myself, I guess, but well over 10 years ago. More like, well over 10 years ago, let's leave it at that. And somebody wanted to buy this business from me. And I was kind of like, okay, like, sure, I'll sell it. It kind of made sense. And what I learned in that business I started seeing the future of like, okay, I learned this in eBay of how to get this traffic to this stuff and to get people to buy it. So, what else can I do? So I started thinking, okay, I'm going to create these websites. I'm going to sell these products and do this. So I had this whole plan of, how to take what I've already learned and apply it to other things. And then for the final time of dropping out of school, kind of all aligned with that. So it was like, this makes sense now. I'm going to do it. So I just dove in and just went to town and had a lot of successes and failures since then. But it's been a very interesting, great journey. But really exciting. Yeah,
I think too that, it's so funny because I see now with the influx of social media and obviously the World Wide Web, which has been around for quite some time now when you consider when it first hit the marketplace, and now it's just exploding, that people believe that success and entrepreneurship is something that can happen overnight. I hear these, I hear these 30-day, six-figure, commercials and advertisements and videos. And yet, but and something that I see, and a question that I had for you, knowing that you tried the school thing 3 different times, is that most people would look at that as that in itself. For me, that's its own form of entrepreneurship. Is that you try to form, you try to format once, it didn't work. You tried it again, it didn't work. You tried it a third time, but you said something earlier that I really want our listeners to understand. And I want you to piggyback on, was that when someone wanted to buy your eBay business, it was strange to you, but yet you knew what you had learned running that business. And all you said was, okay, I'm going to take what I learned here and apply it to something larger. So do you feel that most people that think they're an entrepreneur or want to become an entrepreneur miss that real easy step as far as taking what they've already learned and applying it to something else?
Yeah. I mean, I think that here's something interesting. Kevin O'Leary was actually telling this to me, the Shark Tank guy. I was interviewing him for something on Influenza a while back. And he said he made his hundreds of millions or billions or whatever it is at this point, a lot of money, when he wasn't paying attention to the money. But he was so focused on what he was doing, so driven and so in the moment of what he was building and what he was doing, that he wasn't sitting there staring at the bank account. He wasn't sitting there, hoping it's going to happen. He was just so in that moment. And then before he knew it, he was like, wow, I've built this huge thing. And I didn't go out to necessarily do that, but by being so passionate. And I think it goes back to really strong goals too. If you've got a really strong goal, you can keep yourself in there no matter what the immediate outcome is. And I think a lot of people get stuck where they're thinking about money. And it's like, but if you think about it, I don't want to create a life where I'm just chasing money at the end, because I want to be happy now. The journey now is I want to do exciting stuff now. I want to do interesting things now. I want to be, stimulated every day and like what I'm doing. I don't want to live my life for something I hate, like sitting in a cubicle to make a bunch of money that I can maybe use later. You know what I mean? So
I love that.
Yeah.
I love how you said that. I don't want to be chasing money till the end. And man, it hit me right then like a ton of bricks. Like, I don't want to be either, because then that means I've missed everything I could have done with my 5 and 3-year-old son.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
So you talk about Kevin O'Leary, which brings me to a great point, is that he got so focused on hitting goals and really grinding and really putting in the time and the work. And then all of a sudden, boom, he had built something fantastic. And it brings me to, it looks like to me you looked up at one point in your advertising and consulting agency, BD Ventures, went from being a private company you started to number 172 on Inc.'s 500 list. Talk to me about that.
Yeah, it was crazy. It was a company that I had for a long time. I had the company for probably 10 years at this point. And it was always my consulting and marketing company, and we did PR and stuff like that as well. And one day, so I was working a lot with mobile apps, and I was in an industry called performance marketing, which is basically in the mobile space. What they'll do is they'll say, hey, Brian, or my company, we'll pay you $5 for every install you get us, for every mobile app install or user. So it's a kind of like user acquisition. So all of a sudden I had $1 million deal on the plate with a big, I can't say the name, but a big, very well-known app. And we leveraged this deal, and this one deal opened up so many other opportunities. Once we worked with this app, there was all these other opportunities in front of me, and ended up turning into not even just the performance marketing stuff, but we started doing PR, we started doing managing social media. And this is all stuff that was in my wheelhouse and in my team's wheelhouse for many years of figuring out how to get traffic and sales online. So we leveraged this whole thing. And before we knew it, we had all these clients and we had our own products and all these different things under this BDE Ventures conglomerate, really. And yeah, we made the Inc. 500 list. We were 25th in the marketing and advertising category. It was crazy, and it opened up a lot of doors. It was something that, it's weird because I'm definitely I'm not a flashy guy. I'm not somebody that particularly cares about that stuff, but it was one of those things that was like, it was a pat on the back for myself. I was like, that's cool. I can, this is cool. I'm not showing off Lamborghinis here. We're talking about, an award or something. That was something that took a while for me to be okay with that. I actually didn't tell anybody about it for quite a while. And then I was like, no, it's okay to talk about this stuff. I think it inspires people to show this is what's possible to be done. We're not doing it in a douchey way, it's just saying like, this is what's possible. So that was a big turning point for me too. And that's actually when I started my own personal branding. Before that, I didn't really have too much personal branding. But I said, yeah, it's okay to do this in a sort of a more mindful way. You have people out there doing this personal branding in a very aggressive, like flashy in your face kind of way, and all the power to them if that's what they want to do. That's not my way. So yeah, that was definitely a big turning point for my whole career, really.
So, and guys, once again, we want to just say thank you for everyone that's out there on iTunes, SoundCloud, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, Pandora, and all the other great podcasting formats. The power of great, once again, brought to you by the great folks at Rush Impact Media. They do such an amazing job to help us behind the scenes, really power the power of great. And we're here with Brian D. Evans, Inc. 500 entrepreneur, founder of Influencive, columnist at Inc., columnist at entrepreneur.com, contributing writer at business.com. Let me take a deep breath and continue down his bio. But, one thing, Brian, that you said right there that I really want to also take a little bit more and expand upon was that you had BDE Ventures for over 10 years.
Exactly.
And talk to us about, the deals that you were really working on and how hard it was to really try to get yourself to a point where then all of a sudden, when this $1 million deal came to the table, you understood just all the nuances. You understood how precious it was, and what was really the defining moment that helped close that out for you.
Yeah, and actually you said earlier about these overnight successes, or how people perceive things as overnight successes. And really that company to me was a 10-year overnight success. It took 10 years to build that overnight success. And really it took it was, there was actually no overnight success. It took many, many years of hard work to build that. So it was something that was learning all those different pieces of the puzzle and then figuring out how to put them together and do them differently than others to be able to stand out enough to create something that wasn't just because here's the problem, especially in the marketing space and PR even, and performance marketing. Oftentimes what people will do is they'll say to get business, their idea is, okay, let's lower the price. So we're better than others. Let's lower the price. But to me, that's a race to the bottom. You're racing to zero. So I would never compete on things like price. It would always be about quality and doing things different, less traditionally, finding unconventional ways to to do things that others weren't even doing. There's an interesting thing that works very well with influence of social media that people miss a lot when they're doing social media, that I'll tell you. So on social media, Facebook in particular, Facebook, when you have a Facebook page for your business, what people tend to do wrong is they'll feed it the same kind of content all the time. They'll just keep slamming in there whatever they want to give it. That's like, if I was like, Matt, I'm going to feed you crackers for the next 30 days. You can only eat crackers for the next 30 days. You're not going to be a happy guy. And then take it for 6 months. You're not going to be a happy guy if you have to eat crackers for 6 months. So that's what people are doing with their Facebook page. You're putting the same kind of content in there that Facebook's not responding to, and they're just trying to get it in there because that's what they want. But what you should do is feed it a balanced diet of different kinds of media. You can do native images, native video. Facebook Live now is a big thing. You can externally link to articles and externally link to YouTube videos. Figure out what people are responding best to, and that's like, it's like a diet, right? It's like you have to have a balance. So by giving it that balance that it wants, it'll reward you by organically giving you more impressions and more people to what you actually want. So learning different ways. So like, and I have a lot of analogies. That's just one of them that comes to mind, but it actually, stuff like that has helped when I was more aggressively selling clients and stuff. Having these simple analogies would really help them understand it. Like why, so like, for example, we'd use a pitch like that. We don't do social media management anymore, but that's just an example of something I would tell somebody that having these analogies would really help them understand. So I would have different things like that in different spaces we were in. And then, because here's the thing. And one of the big problems that I saw was and we even had salespeople we had to let go sometimes and stuff like that because they were trying to sell it the same way as everybody else. And then if it's the same way as everybody else, they don't see the quality difference. They can't really see the difference. So then it's all about price. But I didn't want to make it a race to the bottom about price. So having those kind of things would help us sell services and stand out from the rest.
No, and here's the great thing, guys. So if you haven't already, you got to get over to influencive.com. That's INFLUENCIVE. And the title is Unconventional Wisdom, Influential Minds. And I think that's something that Brian just laid out there, was that for me, being a former athlete, my body was a temple. And I know that people don't get that sometimes, but from everything that I ate to everything that I drank to the sleep that I got was all to keep my body in peak and post-performance state so I could get the right amount of sleep so my body could perform at its highest peak levels when it needed to. Yep. And what I love that you said there was that most people are not feeding their social media or their media channels the right diet of media or content. And man, I was like, wow, that's actually crazy. And then it goes back to when you get a graphic photo and you put it on Instagram and how it automatically just gets traffic through the roof. And then you do something with a video and how it changes. That was so I learned something right there. Thank you for that. I know our audience learned it as well. So something that I really see from you, Brian, is that you're not a flashy guy. You're almost one of those people that would rather see other folks get to the mountaintop before you. And being a millennial or one of those older millennials that still has a little bit of that baby boom installation, right, that I call it, why is that a driving force for you, really helping other people be successful?
I had a near-death experience when I was about 8 years old. So when I was a young kid, I was like a really outgoing, like wanted attention all the time, like was always, in everybody's face, talking a million miles a minute. And when I was 8, I had a near-death experience. I was on a pedal bike, and I was playing football on the bikes. I know, stupid idea. And I fell off the bike headfirst into a brick wall. And I just had a epiphany there at 8 years old, and I saw the world differently. So this sort of helped me see things in a new light. And I just thought there was more depth to everything than people would show you. And like, I see these people and entrepreneurs out there, if you want to call them that do like, they're really into flashy things and like showing off and look at me. And I just think there's so much more to life, into this world, into business and entrepreneurship, into everything than that. So, I've always been a deeper thinker, like a Tony Robbins, right? You don't see him showing off his, you don't see him showing off on social media in that sense, right? So like, that's what I wanted to create. I wanted to be a Tony Robbins. I wanted to be a deeper thinker. I wanted to be, something that was more meaningful, that was going to leave a legacy in that other sense, not the let's just show off things sense. So that's what I wanted to create. So that's why, it's great to be able to get my message out there. I love that. So any opportunity to get my message out there, that's what I'll do. I do those things, but beyond that, I'm not interested,
Yeah.
So that was a big thing to me, I think.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. I tell people all the time is that I probably started 10 years later in really starting to understand and starting to achieve entrepreneurial success, because 10 years prior, I was a little bit more consumed with what Matt was going to get versus then what Matt could do with the gifts that he was given to help other people.
Yeah.
Being an athlete, very competitive. I didn't have a lot of opportunities to succeed growing up. I came from a very humble background. My dad was a great sales rep, but, taking care of my mom and my two sisters and I, it's not like we had a lot of expendable income. And so, but I see now more people are concerned with showing Lamborghinis and pictures of $100 bills than showing the group of people that helped them make those Lamborghini payments or the $100 bills. And it drives me insane. So, something else that you're really passionate about, it seems, is that you really have a passion for contributions, especially when it comes to your articles and when it comes to the content that you want to present. And so, how has that been also a catalyst for your success?
Yeah, that's been a huge thing, actually. So, and this goes to the reason why I started Influensive. But if you asked me even a year or two ago now, probably 2 years ago, if I thought I would be writing for all these big sites and having my own site this size, I'd have been like, you're crazy. No way. So really starting Influensive for me was wanting to conquer my fear of writing and being seen and being out there. So this kind of started with my own personal branding journey. So I started putting content out there, and honestly, in the beginning, it wasn't very good. But what's cool about it is, I think, especially written content, anything really, the trick is just starting. And then it's like, especially when it's out there to the world, you want to make it better, right? You don't want to just have junk out there. So naturally, in time, just through repetition, and you probably, even sports, like when people start, at a young age, you have to get better and better and better and better, right? So before you know, you're a pro athlete. So same thing happened with me with writing. I was like, I didn't think I was very good, but I got better and better and better and better. Before I knew it, people were like, "Oh, we love your stuff," and I was kind of blown away, honestly. So it started resonating with people. So that's actually why I started Influensive. I was like, okay, I need a platform to do this on. I might as well make my own site. I had this domain that I really liked and this brand that I thought I could create. So I was like, okay, let's put it out there. Before I knew it, there was 5 people that wanted to also write for it, 10 people, 20 people, 50 people. And now there's over 100. And it's just become its own, entity now and its own thing. And it's taken a life of its own. So it's been a very interesting journey. And then before I knew it, all these other publications wanted me to write for them. And it opened up all these doors. And before I knew it, people were saying, "Oh, you're such a great writer." And I was like, 2 years ago, that was terrifying to me. If you asked me if I'd be a writer, I would say absolutely not. No way. So it's been a accidental and interesting journey.
Well, and I think too that, so we were talking a little bit off air as well, is that writing is something that I've really started to hone in a passion for. I did it a lot earlier on, but I didn't think I was very good at it. And quite frankly, it wasn't the cool perception, especially in rural America.
Yeah.
So, but at the same time, I go back and look at all the things that I've written and how it's really helped guide me to being better and being more efficient.
Yeah.
And to really looking into things. And so what I find funny is that people look at writing blogs and articles as one of those dinosaur type behaviors.
Yeah.
But yet it's one of those things that I firmly believe will stand the test of time.
It will. Yeah, absolutely. And I think writing is something that it helps clarify to yourself in a way as well. Like when I write something down, and here's the test I do when I write something. I say, okay, I'm not publishing this piece of content until I'm so confident in it that if somebody were to interview me on the news live, that I'd be able to explain it. So that, thinking about it like that, I forget where I heard that from, but I heard that at one point, and that really stuck with me. And when you have that mindset behind it, don't publish anything until you can explain it in like 60 seconds or less live on the news and it makes sense and it's interesting. Don't publish it. And taking that mindset with it, it really helps me. If I write something about social media or whatever, or PR, it helps me clarify it in my own mind because I have to actually think about it. Like, okay, how can I put this in the clearest, concise, most interesting way on paper, written down? And that really has helped me. Also, the other interesting thing about writing is that content marketing especially really helps grow a personal brand. You know, it really helps you get your message and yourself out there, so you can really capitalize on that to help build your own personal brand as well.
You know, I think I couldn't agree with you more. And I think with so much saturation in the marketplace, with so many people trying to create these viral videos or trying to create this great backdrop or this great, one-liner or this headline, is that you're exactly right. Content marketing, people that really understand the power of the written word could elevate themselves to that thought leader category a lot quicker, because you're having to spend a lot of time researching, making sure you're not taking other people's stuff and paraphrasing it. And that goes back to what my point was to you to kind of ask you this question, is that, do you feel like that once you started to really dive into this writing is when you started to understand Brian D. Evans as a brand?
Absolutely. Yeah, I really did. It actually made me realize that I was somebody that prefers to go into extremely competitive industries. And because to me, it's like, I know there's a big pie out there, and a sliver of that pie is worth a lot. Not that money is the ultimate motivator to me. It's absolutely not. But I've had most of my success, in fact, almost all of my success, by going into extremely competitive industries and making a lot of noise. So that really helped me realize who I was as an entrepreneur, and it helped give Influensive its legs, and it really clarified things to me. So that's absolutely spot on. That's a very good, I actually never thought about that before until you mentioned it, but that's absolutely true.
Yeah, and I think too, I resonate with you on that aspect as well, because I was like most people that started to understand the power of social media, and once you start having a kind of a persona that people recognize or they relate to, then it's like the vultures come out of everywhere, and they're wanting to sell you this system, or they want you to create this, or they want you to do that. And for me, it wasn't until I went back and started to really understand how powerful that written word was that I started to know that, like, while Matt I don't speak very softly. I enjoy putting it out there to people. I definitely want to make sure everybody knows how passionate I am about it. But deep down, I'm really almost like an introverted person. I really just want to help people get to where they want. And I'm not concerned about the pats on the back, or I'm not concerned about any platform.
Yeah,
I'm like Zig Ziglar. I know that if I can help enough people get to where they want, I'm going to get there too.
Yeah.
And so something else that is interesting about you is that you have this you found this concept called the Startup Guild, and I know currently right now you've had such an influx of people that used it that it's currently closed to new members.
Yeah.
But talk to us about the Startup Guild, and what was your thought behind that, and how it's really helped these entrepreneurs at the early stages really get better structure.
Yeah. So Startup Guild was a private community, kind of like a mastermind. It was I started it before Influensive, and it created this niche community of people that and it's actually, I'll give an example. One of the things I wanted to create was, you've probably seen on Instagram where people will share each other's stuff. They create these groups of people that they share each other's stuff to help get them traction. So I wanted to create like a community of people that just supported each other. And it turned into like a content marketing syndicate, if you will. So it's actually completely closed now. It's morphed into sort of a team of people that promote each other's content and stuff like that. But it was surprising to me, because what ended up happening was I created this army of people that wanted to share the stuff on Influensive ultimately. So that was one of the driving factors initially with Influensive getting initial traction. I had this big group of people that just were like fanatical about sharing the content, and in exchange we would share their content. So we created this like group of people that would just share content, and we will put articles up and get like 500 retweets completely organically now because we have this group that's built up. So that was something that just really helped me create like there's a book called, I think it's 1,000 True Fans. And I feel like if you, and it's either a book or, yeah, I think it's a book. But it's a concept as well, that if you have 1,000 true diehard fans for anything and they're really fanatical about it, you can build that into almost any size business, and that can support just about anything, those 1,000 true fans. So we had maybe 500, but not 1,000 initially anyways. But even that initial 500 people, which is a lot of people that are sharing content and engaging and doing different things and supporting something, is just tremendously valuable. So I think for anybody, for any industry, no matter what business you're in, if you can get that number of people, even 50, even 100 people that are just, fanatical about it and love it. And obviously you want to provide them value too. It's a group, it's an exchange. So that's really something that really ultimately helped Influensive. And it's actually how I met Clinton Senko, which is, he's the COO of Influensive now. He works with me there. And that's how we met. He was in this startup guild, and we met through that. So it would definitely open a lot of doors to do that. And I think it's a lot of people in different industries do stuff like this. Some people just call it masterminds or just, private groups or whatever. But it's absolutely been a very valuable thing to have those people.
Well, and I think it's amazing that you said that, because we're living in a sharing economy.
Yeah.
And yet so many people fail to understand that, and they expect that you're going to create one post and it's going to be this greatest post of all time, when in reality, you've got to learn how to engage with people. You have to show people that you're not some one-hit wonder, or you're just not looking for them to share your stuff and you're not going to reciprocate that in return. That drives me absolutely bonkers. So I think that's great that you took a startup guild, really looking at organic, I would almost say content sponsorship, really, where, hey, you guys are out there trying to share ideas and promote one another, and it morphed into something greater.
Yeah.
And to me, that's what I love about where the time we're in, is because if you really go into it like you're going to build a friendship, whether you're in LA and I'm in Tennessee, or no matter where we are, if you really go into it, social media nowadays does not let you hide. I don't care what you say. You can create that video, but every now and then you're going to post those posts where people are like, okay, this is who I'm really talking to.
Yeah.
This is who I'm really seeing.
Absolutely.
And, that's something that amazes me. So I think that's great. And I think for most people listening right now that are struggling to find their place on social media, look to find these groups. Don't go and join a million groups like you do on Facebook. Find a few that really believe in what you believe. The content is what you believe, and that they're really going to organically support you and help you grow. Would you not say the same thing, Brian?
Yeah, absolutely. I think too that it really goes back to networking genuinely. And I think that you can't put yourself on a pedestal. I think you have to be approachable. And I've always wanted to create an energy where people could feel like they can approach me. So I think I've been pretty successful in creating that vibe that people can say, hey, this guy looks approachable. This guy seems approachable. And it's by creating that energy, I think really opens up a lot of opportunities. And another thing that with networking, there's like this one thing, it's a pet peeve of mine, but I think people will see the value. So like what'll happen is people will be networking and they'll send out emails introducing people to others, and I think you have to be very careful with that, because what it can do is, not everybody, some people it's okay, but it can really turn people off. So it's like, if every time I get an email from Matt, it's like he's giving out my contact info and introducing me to 100 people that I didn't ask him to. It's like, oh, geez, it turns you off a little bit. So I think you should always, I think when people are doing these introductions, which happens a lot in the entrepreneurial community, you should say to each side of each side, hey, Matt, do you want to be introduced to this guy, Bob? Bob, do you want to be introduced to Matt and explain a little bit, then do the introduction? Because it's warm. It's coming from Brian or whoever, and you have this warm introduction. And I think that's one common mistake people make. And obviously it's different if you're like, if I say to you, hey, if you know any developers, please send them my way. That's a different scenario. You can send me all the developers. But I think that one little adjustment is very, very powerful, because it makes people respect you more and know you're not going to just, it's like giving out someone's phone number. It's in modern times, really. I just think that one little adjustment is very powerful. And if you make that adjustment, you'll notice that your networking drastically improves, and people will value you a lot better, I think.
I couldn't agree more. Nothing drives me insane is then when I meet somebody for the first time and the first real communication we get is, hey, I want to introduce you to these 3 people. And I'm thinking, I'm just now getting to learn you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So
exactly.
it really makes, not that I don't appreciate what they're trying to do.
Right.
But unfortunately, emails and the written word can be interpreted differently.
Exactly. Or the other thing too is you'll say, hey, oh, Matt, Richard Branson, right? Can you introduce me? It's like, I just started talking to you. We're not there yet.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's another little adjustment there.
Well, to your point though, you and I met organically online.
Yeah, exactly.
And I remember that it wasn't one of those things where either one of us just hit and attacked one another.
Exactly.
It was, I really started to pay attention to influences, and really liked your articles, and really enjoyed the one about the 30 under 30. You had several of my buddies in there, and Calvin Wayman was one, and Maddox was another. Yeah. I love those 2 guys.
Yeah.
And I remember that I shot you a message, and at the time I shot you a message, you were like, well, man, it's funny you're sending me a message. I was actually
literally on your site. Yeah. It was like synchronicity or something. It was one of those weird things that's like, that's so weird. Like I was literally on your site looking at the podcast, and then I saw the message and I was like, whoa, that's weird.
Yeah.
That's like one of those weird synchronicities. And I was like, okay, I got to talk to this guy.
But I think that what you said there was that all these people are trying to look for these perfect algorithms or these perfect layouts of how to connect with people of influence, when in reality, it's the old school way of doing business.
Yeah, it is. It really is. It's definitely.
You have to understand that Ted Rubin said this on my podcast, and I really thought it was great, is that digitally shake someone's hand or digitally look someone in the eyeballs and make sure that you understand who you are and what you're about, and understand that if you are someone of influence and they respond to you, then they're going to vet you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And so I think it's so funny when people would just out of the blue, hey, Matt, I saw where so-and-so was on your podcast. I'd love to be on it. And I'm thinking, well, do you even know what it was about? Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And then when I get deeper and I'll say, well, hey, what was it about that one podcast you really like? And then it's crickets. And it's because all they saw was the name.
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah, that's
true. Come on.
Yeah.
So, Brian, for you, there's so many things you're doing. You're really building out Influensive. What's your mission for Influensive? What's your big goals for the company?
I want to reach 80 million people on Influensive in terms of readership. And it's one of those things where I was having a meeting with somebody and they asked me that question. And this is several months ago now, when we were sort of on this crazy roller coaster ride up. And I said it, and I was like, wow, okay, I've got to do it now. So, and I know like Tony Robbins one time said, I'm going to feed 100 million people. It's like, wow, that's a lot of people. You're going to feed 100 million people. And he did. He's done it. He's fed 100 million people. It's as crazy as it sounds. So I think setting those goals, as crazy as you think they sound, make them more attainable. And it puts things in perspective. People say, wow, you have 800,000 readers now? And I say, yeah, but we're going to 80 million. Like this is small potatoes at this point. So having these goals, I think and I've always been one of those guys that like my goals are out in the clouds. Like I'm extremely optimistic. I'm an extremely optimistic person. It's not that I don't like negative people, but I can't be around negative people because I'm so positive and forward looking. And it's like, if someone says I can't go to 80 million, I say, yes, I can. You're going to see. So that's my energy. So, and also one thing that I was saying before when I said if in quotes, what I was saying there was I call it the inevitability of success mindset. Basically what it is I remove conditional statements like if as much as possible, not in an egotistical way. Don't get me wrong. Not like I'm some crazy maniac and everything's going to be successful. Obviously things fail and stuff like that. But in terms of a mindset to help me go forward. If I catch myself, and I noticed it when I dropped out of college many times, I would say, okay, I guess I'll give it one more try. And I would say things like try, like I'm going to try. And, for me, that I can't even say those things, because then I don't want to do it. I know if I say that, I don't even want to do it. If I say, I'll try to be on your show, Matt, maybe, I know I don't want to do it, but I said, yes, I want to do it. So I think you have to have conviction with what you're doing and what you're saying. And then those 80 million, it's attainable because you're dead set in it. And look, again, like, I'm not an egomaniac. If I get halfway there, I'll be very happy still, but it's just about the mindset of giving yourself the best possible outcome amongst yourself anyways.
Well, look at, and I think you're spot on there. And I love that. And trust me, for a guy that's super competitive, I have goals that when I tell people in my small rural community what I'm doing, they look at me like, what? Like, are you kidding me? You're going to do this? And then when I tell people about my podcast and, how in 32 episodes I've had so-and-so, so-and-so, and so-and-so, and they're going, so I think that what you just said there is something that most people just totally whiff at, is that they believe trying is really trying, when in reality it's doing that's trying.
It's doing, yeah.
And I will tell you right now that I have a stack of thank you cards that I'm going to send to a lot of doubters because it's that doubt and it's that constant negativity that I had to remove myself from that really put me on a path to ultimately start being able to take care of my family in the way I wanted.
Yeah.
I think for me, the mindset was exactly what you said. I had to get rid of those thinking words, and I had to add what I call those power statements.
Exactly. Especially as an athlete, I'm sure you'll resonate with this. It's like, you probably didn't go out as an athlete and say, well, I hope I'll, achieve this goal. You were like, I want to win the championship or something, probably, right? You have some big goal, and most athletes are like that. They have some, like, look at like a Michael Jordan. I'm sure he wasn't like, well, maybe I'll do it. He was like, no, I'm going to win. You know what I mean? And, I know guys like Tony Robbins do the same thing. They're like, yes, it's going to happen. I'm going to do it. We're going to feed 100 million people or whatever it is. So I think you have to have those. You have to,
well, I remember I had a professional baseball scout that came, and he actually came to watch another player.
Oh.
And it's one of those things where I happen to have one of the greatest games of my life. And he walked up to me after the game, and he said, it was a scout for the Oakland Athletics.
Wow.
And he said, Matt, what is it about you that would make you stand out to me other than what you did today? Because I'd never heard of you before. And I said, well, I'm going to try harder than anyone you've ever seen. He said, well, man, I see people like that all the time. And it stuck with me.
Yeah.
For a couple of days, I was like, well, I don't really get what he was saying there. When in reality, what he was saying was, I don't need people that try. I need people that are going to get it done. Whether you strike out or whether you get hits, you're going to get something accomplished. And so, and this brings me, as we start to wrap up the show, one more question that really is kind of, I find striking in what you said about, I want to reach 80 million people, is that if you can't convince yourself that you can do it, how would you ever get to 80 million people, right?
Exactly. Yeah. I think it's little steps along the way. I want to reach 80 million people a month on the site. And, when you have little accomplishments along the way, I think it's like, wow, it's happening. Like, we had a piece of content that reached 15 million people on Facebook. The video was viewed like 6 million times. There was 50,000 shares, some ridiculous number like that. And it was like, wow, this is happening. Like, and even though you have the conviction, when you start to see it happening, it just makes it that much more real and tangible. So I think having little accomplishments along the way that reinforce your goal just gives you fire. Like, to me anyways, that lights me up. I'm just like, whoa, it's happening. Like, I believe it. I see it. Like, it's happening. So that's been a big thing to me, is I think being grateful for those little accomplishments and recognizing them. So, no matter how small it is, I think you have to recognize them. And that's been a big step to me, is just being really grateful. And even, saying to yourself like, wow, this is awesome. I'm really grateful for this. So that's been a big shift in my mind too, is just having as much gratitude as possible for everything that's happening.
Absolutely. Being grateful and humble is one of the most important pieces of integrity, in my opinion. However, I'm of the belief system that if I can't convince myself that I'm going to have a great life
Mm-hmm.
and I'm going to live out and achieve great things and help other people do the same, then I can chalk it up that no one else is going to believe that.
Exactly. No, you're right.
You know?
Absolutely. Yeah,
So
absolutely.
it's not going into it being arrogant. It's understanding that what I put out and the vibe that I put out has to be backed up with real facts and actions.
Absolutely.
And those things that showcase just that. So, Brian, what's next for you? What's next for Influencive, and what can readers and those watching and listening on the podcast expect for you and your team moving forward?
Lots of exciting content coming out. And look, Influencive is really a source of inspiration above all else. We're putting out a lot of inspirational content that I think is going to show people what's possible. We're doing really exciting interviews. We have really exciting content coming out there. It really shows that there is an alternative to sitting in a cubicle for the rest of your life. There is actually an alternative, and we're proof of it. And there's a lot of stories and things we're putting out that you'll be very excited about, and tangible stuff too that will help people along these journeys of being location independent and financially free and all these different things. So that's really the goal, is reaching those 80 million people and inspiring them and showing them that there is an alternative and there's positive, great things out there that anyone can do. It's just a matter of figuring out what it is you want to do, setting your mind to it, putting some goals in place, and just going after it and being inspired.
Absolutely. And being inspired is an amazing thing. So as we wrap up the show, everyone, Brian D. Evans, Influencive founder, columnist at Inc., columnist at entrepreneur.com, contributing writer at business.com, just an unbelievable entrepreneur, 3-time college dropout. But let me tell you something that we haven't touched, and we're going to briefly hit it before we say goodbye to each and every one of you, is that he's also a phenomenal interviewer. And he's had the opportunity to interview some of the best in the business, people like Kevin O'Leary. And I know you had, I believe it was Ryan Blair not too long ago as well. Yeah. And I believe, to me, that was a powerful article.
Yeah.
When you look at that guy now, you would never think he had the story that he had.
I know, yeah.
So knowing that you've interviewed some power players, 2 things. One, which one stands out the most to you right now? And what do you have in your sights as that next big interview you want to get under your belt?
Ryan Blair had such an inspiring story of what he came from literally rock bottom. He was in a gang in LA and he was just absolute rock bottom. It's into some dodgy business, into building like a multiple $100 million, I think $250 million company. So that's absolutely inspiring to me. And then Kevin O'Leary is just, he's somebody you see on Shark Tank and you get an impression, but then when I actually talked to him, I was like, wow, there's so much more to this guy than meets the eye. So yeah, it was some more Shark Tank people coming on for interviews that'll be out shortly, and yeah, just it's and that's the thing too. It's cool to interview those people at the top of the mountain, but it's also cool to see people that are in the journey now, more so, that are just starting out or having a good amount of success, because that's what I think people relate more to. It's harder to relate, I think, in many cases to someone like a Kevin O'Leary, because it's like, oh yeah, he's on Shark Tank, he's got all this money, great guy. But when you're more in the trenches, I think people like that because they say, I can do this. I see it. So we're going to have a lot more stuff like that on there as well. Not just the people at the top of the mountain that people I think will relate to a lot.
I'm excited. Well, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Brian D. Evans, founder of Influencive.com. I want everyone that's listening to this podcast, you got to get over to Influencive.com. You got to check out the articles. You got to see all the amazing things that are happening. But more importantly, you need to subscribe the newsletters and stay up to date with the content. You're going to see so many amazing people that are contributing, that are really helping you understand that things are possible if you're committed to doing the things necessary to get there. And I tell people all the time as we wrap up the show is that success isn't measured by what you step out of. It's truly measured by what you are committed to step into. And I'm so grateful every single week to be your host on the Power of Great podcast, where we have that one mission in mind, and that's to help you recognize that your current situation is not your defining moment. And we'll see you all next week.